Mum, we need to talk about you moving out. My son stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand, speaking the way you'd discuss weather or traffic. Casual, matter of fact, as if he were suggesting I switch laundry detergent rather than leave the house I'd built with my own hands 37 years ago. I set down the dish I was washing. The water was still running, a steady stream that suddenly sounded too loud in the silence that followed his words. Outside the window above the sink, the maple tree Richard and I had planted when we first broke ground swayed in the October wind, leaves the colour of fire against a steel grey sky. Moving out, I repeated. Not a question, just letting the words sit between us, seeing if he'd hear them the way I heard them. Yeah. He crossed to the counter, helped himself to the banana bread I'd baked that morning. Jen and I have been talking. With the market the way it is, this place is worth a fortune. You don't need all this space, and honestly, Mom, the upkeep is getting to be too much. We're worried about you on those stairs, managing the yard, all of it. Worried. The word had sharp edges when he said it, cutting in ways I don't think he intended. Or perhaps he did. Perhaps after 72 years, I still didn't understand my own son well enough to know when concern was genuine and when it was convenient. I turned off the water, dried my hands on the towel embroidered with chickens that had hung in this kitchen since 1987. The fabric was thin now, worn soft through thousands of washings, but the stitching held. That counted for something. Where exactly would I move to? Well, that's what we wanted to discuss. He pulled out his phone, already scrolling. There's this great assisted living place about 20 minutes from our house. They have a waiting list, but Jen's friend's mother just moved in, and she loves it. Community activities, meals provided, nurses on staff. I'm 72, Michael, not 90. I know, Mom, but it's about planning ahead, being practical. He set his phone on the counter, looked at me with what I suppose he thought was patience. You're alone here. Dad's been gone 3 years. What if something happens? What if you fall or... I haven't fallen, not yet, but you could. He took a bite of banana bread, chewed, swallowed. Look, I'm not saying it has to happen tomorrow, but we should start looking at options. Get the house listed, maybe by spring. Prices are insane right now. You could probably clear close to $800,000. That would more than cover assisted living, and then Jen and I could use the rest for... He stopped, had the grace to stop at least. For what, Michael? For the girls' college funds, for the business, for our future. He said it defensively, as if I were being unreasonable for asking. Mum, this isn't about taking anything from you. It's about being smart with assets. This house is just sitting here. I'm sitting here, you know what I mean. But I did know what he meant. That's precisely the problem. I knew exactly what he meant when he looked at this house and saw $800,000, when he looked at me and saw an obstacle to claiming it. The house settled around us with its familiar creaks. Old wood, expanding, contracting, breathing the way houses do when they've been lived in long enough to develop personality. I knew every sound, every complaint, the loose board on the third stair, the way the pipes sang when the furnace kicked on, the particular groan the back door made if you didn't lift while pulling. Richard and I had built this house. Not metaphorically, actually built it. We'd hired contractors for the foundation and framing, but the rest we'd done ourselves. Weekends and evenings for 2 years, while living in a trailer on the property. Michael had been 8. He'd handed us tools, learned to measure twice and cut once, helped Richard install the kitchen cabinets that still held my dishes. Or perhaps he'd forgotten that. Perhaps 37 years was long enough for memory to transform lived experience into abstraction. Perhaps I'd become, in his mind, simply Mom the woman who occupied valuable real estate, rather than the person who taught him that houses aren't built by wishing, but by the accumulation of deliberate effort. "I'll think about it," I said finally. Relief flooded his face. He'd expected a fight, I realized, had braced for tears or anger or some emotional display that would make him uncomfortable. My calm acceptance confused him, made him generous. "Thanks, Mom. I know it's hard to think about leaving, but honestly, you'll probably be happier, less to worry about." He glanced at his watch. "I should get going. Soccer game at 3. I'll call you later this week, okay? We can start looking at places." He left. I heard his car start, gravel crunching under tires as he backed down the driveway Richard had paved the summer before his heart attack. The sound faded, disappeared, left me standing in the kitchen I'd designed. Left me in the house I'd built, with the understanding that my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd loved through every difficult phase, had just suggested I surrender my life because it was inconvenient to his. I walked through the house slowly. Living room with its cathedral ceiling, the exposed beams Richard had insisted on even though they'd blown our budget. Master bedroom with windows facing east so I'd wake to sunrise. The bathroom Richard had renovated after his mother's stroke, installing grab bars and a walk-in shower because someday we'll need this, Maggie, and I want us to stay in our own home. He'd wanted us to stay together, in the home we'd built. Instead, I was here alone. And our son thought the solution was to package me off to assisted living so he could cash out. I went to Richard's office. Not the office, or my office even, 3 years after his death, still his. The desk he'd built from reclaimed barnwood, the filing cabinet where he'd kept everything organised with labels in his precise engineering handwriting. I opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the folder marked House Documents. Inside was the deed, original from 1987. I unfolded it carefully, read the names printed in official typescript. Margaret Ann Walsh. Not Margaret and Richard Walsh, not joint tenancy, just my name. Because the property had been my inheritance from my father, the money to Socks build the house had been my money, and Richard, practical fair Richard, had insisted the deed reflect that reality. If something happens to me, he'd said, I don't want the kids fighting over what's yours. This way, it's clear. It was clear. The house was mine, solely, legally, completely mine. Michael couldn't force me out because Michael had no claim. His we was presumption, not partnership. His need to talk about you moving out was a request he'd framed as an inevitability because he'd assumed, I suppose, that I'd simply comply. I sat at Richard's desk, holding the deed, feeling the weight of paper that represented more than property. This was autonomy, authority, the ability to make my own choices, soksbakelast, on thing en otters de landslagged, about my own life, and I was about to make one. I didn't call Michael back that week. He didn't seem to notice. Thursday evening, he sent a text. Mum talked to realtor friend, can get you top dollar, will call this weekend. I read it twice, the presumption in every word. Get you top dollar, as if he were doing me a favour, as if selling my home was already decided and we were just negotiating logistics. I deleted the message. Friday morning, I called Patricia Henley. We'd served together on the library board for 15 years before she'd retired from teaching to sell real estate. She answered on the second ring. Margaret, how lovely to hear from you. How are you doing? I'm well, Patricia. I have a question for you, completely confidential. There was a pause. Patricia had excellent instincts. Of course, what do you need? If someone wanted to sell their house quietly, no public listings, no open houses, just word of mouth to serious buyers, how would they do that? Another pause, longer this time. Is this about your house, Margaret? It might be. Does Michael know? So she'd heard something. Small town, old friendships. Word travelled. No, and I'd like to keep it that way until I decide what I'm doing. All right. Patricia's voice shifted into professional mode. Off-market sales happen more often than people think. I'd reach out to my network. Buyers I know who are serious, who have financing lined up, who are looking for exactly what you have. No sign, no listing service, no fanfare. It takes longer sometimes, but for sellers who value privacy, it works. How long depends on the property. Yours, in this market, with that land and the quality of construction, I'd have buyers within 2 weeks. Good buyers. People who'd appreciate what you've built. People who'd appreciate it. Not people who'd see $800,000 minus assisted living costs equals profit. Can I think about it? Of course. But Margaret, are you sure this is your home? Yes, I said quietly. It is. That's why I'm the one who gets to decide what happens to it. We hung up. I sat in the kitchen with my cooling tea, looking around at the space I'd designed. The layout that made sense to me. The counter height I'd specified. The window over the sink positioned exactly where I wanted it so I could watch birds at the feeder while washing dishes. Michael and his wife Jennifer had visited last month for Sunday dinner. Jennifer had walked through, commented on how dated everything looked, suggested that with some updating you could really maximize value. She'd meant the cabinets Richard had installed, the tile backsplash I'd chosen, the butcher block counters we'd oiled every year for 3 decades. Dated. As if life had an expiration date, as if love embedded in wood grain and careful workmanship could be erased with fresh paint and granite. I went to my bedroom, opened the closet, reached back behind winter coats to the box I'd put there after Richard died. Inside were letters, decades of them. Birthday cards, anniversary notes, the silly poems Richard used to leave on my pillow when he travelled for work. I pulled out one from our 20th anniversary. Maggie, 20 years in this house we built. 20 years watching you make a home from lumber and will. Everything good I have because you saw what it could be before it existed. I read it 3 times, then carefully returned it to its envelope, put the box back. Richard had seen me clearly, had understood that I wasn't just someone who lived in a house, but someone who created homes, who transformed raw materials into life, who saw what could be before it existed. It was time to see what came next. Saturday, Patricia called back. I have a couple, early 40s, 2 kids. He's a carpenter, she teaches middle school. They've been looking for 2 years but keep getting outbid. They want land, want space, want something with good bones they can make their own. Can I tell them about your place? Tell me about them first. Patricia did. Names: David and Claire Morrison, daughter Emma, 15, son Lucas, 12. They'd lived in apartments their whole marriage, saved carefully, wanted permanence, wanted to teach their children what it meant to build something lasting. They sound like good people, I said. They are. The kind who'd respect what you've created here. All right, tell them they can see it. But Patricia, discretion. I'm not ready for my son to know. Understood. They came Sunday afternoon while Michael was at his daughter's soccer game. I'd baked apple pie, not to impress, but because Sunday meant pie and I'd been baking on Sundays for 52 years. Some habits anchor you when everything else shifts. Claire Morrison stood in my kitchen and cried. Not loud tears, quiet ones, the kind that come from recognition. I'm sorry, she said, wiping her eyes. It's just, this is exactly what I dreamed. The light, the space, the way it feels like someone loved it. Her husband walked through carefully, running his hands over door frames, checking the windows, looking at the house the way Richard used to look at things, assessing, appreciating, understanding the craftsmanship involved. Who built this? He asked.
My husband and I. Most of it. He died 3 years ago.
David nodded slowly. I can tell. You don't get joints this clean with a crew rushing to finish. This was done by people who cared. Yes, We sat in the living room, me in Richard's chair, them on the couch he'd reupholstered twice. Their children were quiet, polite, looking around with the cautious hope of people who'd learned not to want things too much. "Can I be honest with you?" Claire asked. "We can't match what this place is worth. We've been pre-approved for $650, and we know that's probably not enough, but $650,000 is fine." Everyone went silent. Mrs. Walsh-David started. "It's fine. I'm not selling for maximum profit. I'm selling to people who'll take care of what my husband and I built. Patricia says you're serious. You have financing. You'll live here, not flip it." "We'll live here for the rest of our lives," Claire said. "We'll plant a garden. David wants to build the kids a tree house. We'll take care of it. I promise you." "I know you will. That's why I'm accepting your offer." We talked for 2 more hours. About the house, about its quirks, about the loose board on the 3rd stair. We talked about the temperamental washing machine and which trees needed pruning. About Richard's workshop in the garage with tools that still hung where he'd placed them. About the garden beds that would need mulching before winter. When they left, Claire hugged me at the door. "Thank you. You're giving us something we couldn't have otherwise. You're giving me peace of mind. That's worth more than $50,000. After they left, I sat in the quiet house and felt certain this was right. Selling to people who'd love it. Leaving before I was pushed. Choosing my next chapter rather than having it chosen for me. Monday morning I called Patricia. "Draw up the paperwork. I accept their offer." "Margaret, you should know your son contacted me, asked if I'd list your place." "What did you tell him?" "That you hadn't spoken to me about it." "Which was true at the time." She paused. "He's going to find out eventually." "I know, but it will be after the sale is final, the deed is transferred, and I've already moved. He'll find out when there's nothing left to argue about." "That's cold, Margaret." "No, Patricia, it's clear there's a difference." The paperwork took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of quiet subterfuge, of signing documents at Patricia's office while Michael thought I was at book club or getting groceries. 3 weeks of the Morrisons getting inspections and finalising financing and walking through again with a contractor friend. 3 weeks of Michael texting periodically about assisted living brochures, about market analyses, about his timetable for helping me transition. I didn't respond to most of it. When I did, I kept it vague, still thinking, not quite ready. Let's talk after the holidays. He seemed satisfied with that, seemed to think my hesitation was the expected resistance of an old woman afraid of change, rather than the calculated delay of someone executing her own plan. The Morrisons wanted to close before Thanksgiving. They had notice on their apartment ending November 30th, couldn't afford to pay both rent and mortgage. I told Patricia to make it happen. "You'll need somewhere to go," she said practically. I'd been thinking about that. There was a cottage for rent on the other side of town. Small, 1-bedroom, wood stove, screened porch overlooking a pond. The kind of place I'd dreamed about when Richard and I were raising Michael in this big house. The kind of place that was mine alone. I signed the lease the same day I signed the sale documents. At the title company, I sat across from David and Claire Morrison and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not sadness, not regret. Just the clean simplicity of a decision made and executed. "You're sure about this?" David asked quietly while we waited for the notary. "Completely. Your son will survive. He's 50. He has a good job, a nice house his father-in-law helped buy, 2 healthy children. He'll be fine." Claire reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "When Emma's 50, I hope she remembers that I'm a person, not just her mother. Teach her now. It's easier than unteaching it later." We signed, page after page, initials and full signatures, the legal language of property transferring from one owner to another. The notary stamped everything official. Patricia produced 2 sets of keys, one for the Morrisons, one that should have been for me, but that I'd already packed in a box marked "Donation." "Congratulations," the title officer said cheerfully. "It's all yours." David and Claire looked at each other with the particular joy of people who'd fought for something and won. I looked at them and thought about Richard. About the years we'd spent in that house, about the life we'd built that was good and full and complete, and about how completion means knowing when to let go. That evening, I started packing. Not everything. I'd arranged for an estate sale company to handle most of the furniture, the accumulated possessions of 37 years. I took what mattered: Richard's letters, our wedding album, the quilt my grandmother made, the coffee pot that still worked perfectly, the chicken-embroidered dish towel. The rest could stay with the house. Let the Morrisons use Richard's workbench. Let their children eat at our table. Let new life fill the spaces Richard and I had created. I packed, methodically, room by room, and with each box I felt lighter. Not the lightness of loss, but the lightness of clarity. This was right. This was mine to do. Thursday, Michael called. Actually called, not texted. "Hey, Mom, haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" "Fine. Just busy." "Busy with what?" "Projects." Not a lie. Moving was definitely a project. "Well, listen, Jen and I want to take you to look at that assisted living place this weekend. They're having an open house. Perfect timing. Can you do Sunday after lunch?" "I'm not available Sunday." "Mom, you're always available Sundays. We do dinner, remember? Sundays I cooked for them. Sundays I provided free childcare so they could go to soccer games. Sundays I was available because I'd made myself available for 50 years. "I have plans," I said firmly. Silence. Then, "What kind of plans?" "My plans, Michael. I'll call you next week." I hung up before he could respond. Sat in Richard's office, still Richard's office even in the final week, and felt the particular satisfaction of establishing a boundary. My granddaughter Emma called an hour later. Michael's eldest, 17, sharp-minded, kind in ways her father had forgotten how to be. "Grandma, Dad says you're being weird. Define weird." Not answering texts, secretive. He thinks you're getting depressed and maybe not thinking clearly. "I'm thinking very clearly, Emma. That's the problem." she laughed. What's going on? I considered how much to tell her. Emma was perceptive, loyal to her father but not blind. Can you keep a secret? Always. I'm making some changes, big ones. Your dad won't understand, but I need you to know that I'm fine. Better than fine. I'm choosing my next chapter instead of having it chosen for me. Does this have something to do with Dad trying to get you to move? Smart girl. Yes. Good. He's being an ass about it. Talking about the house like it's already his, like you're just in the way. I know. Are you okay, Grandma? Really? Really, I promise. And Emma, you're going to be fine too. I'm making sure of that. We talked for another 20 minutes about her college applications, about the boy she liked, about normal things that reminded me that some connections remained untainted by expectation. When we hung up, I went back to packing with renewed purpose. Saturday, the movers came. Not a big company, just 2 guys with a truck that Patricia recommended. They loaded my boxes, the few pieces of furniture I was taking, Richard's desk. They were efficient, careful, didn't ask questions beyond where things should go in the cottage. By evening, the house was mostly empty. The Morrisons would take possession Wednesday. The estate sale was scheduled for Saturday. Everything was happening exactly as I'd planned. I walked through one last time. The rooms echoed now, stripped of furniture and life, but the bones remained, the good bones David Morrison had recognised, the cathedral ceiling, the morning light, the craftsmanship that had required patience and care. Thank you, I said aloud to the empty house, to Richard's memory, to the version of myself who'd hammered and measured and built. Thank you for 37 good years. Then I locked the door, left the key under the mat for the Morrisons, and drove to my cottage. The cottage was smaller than my closet had been. 1 bedroom, kitchen barely large enough for a table, living room with a wood stove and windows facing the pond. It was perfect. I spent Sunday unpacking, creating order in this new small space, hanging Richard's favourite photo above the wood stove, him at 40, holding a hammer, grinning at the camera with sawdust in his hair. Arranging my grandmother's quilt on the narrow bed, setting up the coffee pot on the tiny counter. By evening, it felt like home. Not the same home, a different one, mine. Monday morning, Patricia called. The SOOT sign went up this morning. Thought you should know before. My phone buzzed, Michael calling. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again immediately, then again. I turned it off. Tuesday he showed up at the house. I watched from my car parked down the street as he pulled into the driveway, got out, stared at the SOOT sign. Watched him try the door, find it locked. Watched him walk around to the back, try that door too. Watched him stand in the driveway for 10 minutes, phone to his ear, leaving what I imagined were increasingly frantic messages. I felt nothing. Not guilt, not regret, just the calm observation of consequences finding their target. Wednesday, the Morrisons moved in. I drove by that evening, saw lights in the windows, saw their daughter Emma, the other Emma, carrying in a box, saw smoke beginning to curl from the chimney. The house was alive again. That mattered. Thursday, my lawyer called. Grace Morrison, no relation to the Morrisons, just one of those coincidences that made life feel orchestrated. Margaret, I have your will update ready and the trust documents for your granddaughter. Good. When can I sign? Whenever you'd like. But I should tell you, your son has been calling. He seems agitated. He's figured out I sold the house. He's demanding to know how you could do this without consulting him. He's using words like incompetent and financially irresponsible. He's threatening to contest the sale. On what grounds? It was my house. I sold it to willing buyers at a fair price. The deed was in my name alone. I know. He knows that too now, but he's upset. Margaret is your son. Yes, which is why I'm establishing a trust for his daughter with the proceeds from the sale. $300,000 accessible when Emma turns 25, managed by you until then, every penny accounted for, every distribution documented. He can't claim I was incompetent when I'm providing more for his child than he's provided for himself. Grace was quiet for a moment. That's brilliant and deliberate. I've had 3 years to think about it. 3 years of watching my son see me as an obstacle rather than a person. 3 years of realizing that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is teach people that actions have consequences. When do you want to sign? Tomorrow, early, before Michael figures out where I'm living. Friday morning, I signed the trust documents at Grace's office. $300,000 in a trust for Emma, my granddaughter, not her father. Money to be used for education, starting a business, buying her first home. Money that would give her freedom Michael had never valued in me. The remaining proceeds, just over $300,000 after fees and taxes, went into my own accounts. Money for my own future, my own security, my own choices. You're set, Grace said, handing me copies of everything. Your will is updated, Emma's trust is established, everything is documented and legal. You've done a remarkable job of protecting your autonomy. I learned from Richard, he always said the most important thing you can do is control your own life, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. He sounds like he was a wise man. He was, and he trusted me to be wise too. I'm finally living up to that trust. I drove home to the cottage, my new home, and felt the weight of finished business. The house was sold, the money was secured, the legal protections were in place. I'd reclaimed my autonomy completely, methodically, without apology. Now I just had to face my son. He called that afternoon. I answered this time. Where the hell have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 4 days. I've been busy, Michael. Busy? Busy selling my house without telling me? Your house? I think you mean my house. Which I've sold. Yes. How could you do this without even discussing it with me? Do you have any idea what that property was worth? Yes. I sold it for what I determined it was worth to a family who will love it the way your father and I did. That's insane. You sold it for under market value to strangers. Do you realise what you've cost me? He stopped, caught himself, but not soon enough. Cost you? I repeated softly. Yes, Michael. I've cost you $800,000 that were never yours. I've cost you the profit from my home, my life, my work. How selfish of me. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Just like you meant I should move to assisted living so you could cash out. Just like you meant I was in your way.
Mum, I never said you didn't have to say it. You showed it every time you walked through my house calculating square footage.
Every time Jennifer commented on updates that would maximise value, every time you sent me listings for assisted living like it was inevitable that I'd comply. Silence. I want to see you, he said finally, face to face. You owe me that.
I don't owe you anything, Michael, but I'll meet you once at the house tomorrow at 3.
I don't have a key anymore.
I know. I'll let you in.
I hung up. Saturday, I drove to the old house. The Morrisons had given me permission to meet Michael there. It's still your house in the ways that matter, Claire had said kindly. You should have closure on your terms. I arrived first, parked in the driveway, walked up to the front door, knocked. Claire answered, flour on her hands, apron around her waist, baking, on a Saturday morning, the way I used to. Mrs. Walsh, come in. We'll stay out of your way. We'll be upstairs. Thank you, Claire. And please, call me Margaret. I stood in the living room that was no longer mine and felt peaceful. The Morrisons had already made changes. Family photos on the mantel, their daughter's school artwork on the refrigerator, a dog bed by the wood stove, life continuing. Michael's car pulled up at 3 exactly. He got out, stared at the house with its new welcome mat, its new porch furniture, its evidence of new occupancy. His face was hard, closed. I opened the door before he could knock. Mum. Michael. We stood there, mother and son, with 30 years of assumptions between us. Come in, I said finally. He followed me into the living room, looked around at the changes, seemed momentarily disoriented. It's different. It belongs to someone else now. People make spaces their own. He turned to face me. How could you do this? Not just sell it, but sell it without telling me I'm your son. Yes, you're my son, and I love you. But that doesn't give you the right to make decisions about my life. I wasn't making decisions. I was trying to help. Help who, Michael? Me or yourself? His jaw worked. That's not fair, isn't it? You came into my kitchen 6 weeks ago and told me I needed to move out. Not asked, told. You'd already researched assisted living, already talked to realtors about what my house was worth, already decided my future. Because I was worried about you? No. I said it quietly but firmly. You were worried about what would happen to this house. You were worried that if something happened to me, you might lose your inheritance, so you tried to preempt that by packaging me off to assisted living while you were still in control. That's not true. Michael, stop. I need you to stop lying to both of us. I sat down in the chair that used to be Richard's. The Morrisons had kept it, thank God. I know what you were thinking because you said it out loud. You talked about market value, about what Jen could use the money for, about the girls' college funds and your business. You never once asked if I wanted to leave. You told me it was inevitable. He stood there, hands clenched. So this is what? Revenge? You're punishing me by giving away my inheritance? Your inheritance? I shook my head slowly. Michael, this house was never your inheritance. It was my home. The deed was in my name. Your father specifically set it up that way to protect my autonomy. And yes, I sold it. I sold it to a family who will cherish it. I sold it for less than market value because money wasn't my priority, legacy was. And what about my legacy? My children's legacy? Your daughter Emma has a $300,000 trust, managed by an attorney, accessible when she turns 25. She'll be able to pay for graduate school, start a business, buy a home. She'll have the kind of foundation you're so worried about. His eyes widened. You gave it all to Emma? I gave Emma her inheritance. The rest is mine, for my own future, my own security, my own life. I'm 72, Michael. I hope I have 20 more years. I plan to live them on my own terms. Where are you even living? In a cottage I'm renting. It has 1 bedroom, a wood stove, and a view of a pond. It's perfect for me. A rental? Mom, that's throwing money away. It's buying freedom. Something I should have done 3 years ago instead of waiting to see if you'd notice I was a person. That landed. I saw it hit him, saw him flinch. I notice you, Mom. I know you're a person. Do you? Tell me one thing about me that doesn't relate to you or your children. One thing I enjoy, one dream I have, one fear that keeps me up at night. Silence. You can't, because you've never asked. To you, I'm Mom, the woman who cooks Sunday dinners and babysits and lends money and exists primarily as a resource for your life. But Michael, I have a life. I've always had one. You just stopped seeing it. He sat down heavily on the couch, put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. I didn't mean to make you feel invisible. I know. That's what makes it worse. You didn't even notice you were doing it. We sat in that living room for a long moment, the cathedral ceiling soaring above us. The afternoon light slanting through windows Richard had positioned for exactly this effect. The house held us in its silence. Your grandmother, your namesake, she told me something once. I said finally. She said the hardest part of watching children grow up is realizing they see you as the answer to who raised me, but forget you're also the answer to who am I becoming. You became so focused on what I could do for you that you forgot I'm also showing you how to age, how to face loss, how to remain yourself when life tries to diminish you. What do you want me to do, Mom? How do I fix this? I don't know if you can, but you can start by seeing me, not as your mother, as Margaret, as a woman who built a house and raised a son and lost her husband and decided she gets to write her own ending. And my place in that ending? That depends on what kind of relationship you want. If you want a mother who exists to serve your needs, I'm not available. If you want a relationship with Margaret Walsh, flawed, stubborn, autonomous, then maybe we have something to build. He nodded slowly. I need to think. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. He stood, started toward the door, then turned back. Emma knows, doesn't she, about the trust? Not yet. That's your conversation to have with her if you want. Or Grace can tell her when she turns 25. Either way, she's provided for. And me? What am I provided with? The truth. The same thing I wish someone had given me 40 years ago. The truth that enabling isn't love, that accommodation isn't relationship, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face the consequences of taking someone for granted. Michael left. I stayed in the living room a few more minutes, listening to the house settle, feeling the weight of finished business. Claire came down the stairs quietly. You okay? Yes. Thank you for letting me do this here. This is your house. It always will be, in some way. She smiled. We're going to take care of it. I promise you that. I know you will. That's why I sold it to you. November became December. The pond behind my cottage froze in lacy patterns, beautiful and temporary. I bought a bird feeder, hung it outside the kitchen window, learned the names of winter birds. Chickadees, nuthatches, the occasional cardinal vivid against snow. I built fires in the wood stove every morning, cooked simple meals, read books I'd been meaning to read for years. Learned that solitude, chosen freely, felt nothing like loneliness. Michael didn't call. I told myself I didn't mind. Told myself I'd expected silence, that consequences meant accepting the possibility of permanent distance. Told myself I was at peace with whatever came next. Most days I believed it. Emma, my granddaughter, called twice. Dad's being weird, won't talk about you, gets angry when I ask where you are. Give him time. Time for what? To decide if he wants a relationship with me or just wanted the idea of a mother. That's dark, Grandma. That's reality, sweetheart. But I'm fine. I promise. She wanted to visit. I put her off, gently. Let your dad work through this first. I don't want to put you in the middle. The week before Christmas, a letter came. Michael's handwriting on the envelope. I held it for 10 minutes before opening it, wondering if it was anger or reconciliation, demands or understanding? It was neither. It was seeing. Mum, I've been trying to write this letter for 3 weeks. Keep starting over because I can't figure out how to say what I need to say without sounding like I'm making excuses or asking for forgiveness I don't deserve. I've been an ass. That's the simple version. The complicated version is that somewhere between becoming a father and trying to be a successful business owner and managing a marriage and 2 daughters, I forgot that you were something besides Mum. I forgot you had a name before you had me. Forgot you had dreams before I became your responsibility. I was talking to Dad's old business partner last week. Ran into him at the grocery store, and he told me about the house, about how you and Dad built it yourselves. He said he'd never seen 2 people work so hard for something, that you mixed concrete and ran electrical and insisted on doing it right even when it would have been easier to hire it out. He said Dad used to talk about how strong you were, how determined, how you never quit once you'd decided something was worth doing. I knew you built the house, but I'd forgotten what that meant. I'd stopped seeing it as an accomplishment and started seeing it as property. Just like I'd stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a role. You were right about all of it. I was trying to get you to move so I could access the house. I told myself it was about your safety, about being practical, about planning ahead. But really it was about money and control and not wanting to risk losing my inheritance. I can't believe I'm writing that out loud. I can't believe I was that person. But I was. Jennifer and I have been in therapy. It's helping. She's made me look at how I treat you, how we've both treated you, like you were there to provide things, Sunday dinners, babysitting, loans we never pay back, emotional support we never reciprocate. I'm ashamed. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I can. But I want to try, if you're willing to let me try. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to see you, actually see you, and maybe build something that's real instead of transactional. If you're not ready, I understand. If you never want to talk to me again, I'll live with that. But I wanted you to know, I see you now, Mom. Margaret, I see you. Michael. I read it 3 times, sat at my small kitchen table with my cooling coffee and my window full of winter birds, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. I wrote back that evening, short, honest. Michael, thank you for seeing me. That's all I ever wanted. I need more time, not because I don't love you, but because I need to make sure you mean this. Need to see actions, not just words. Need to know that when you think about me, you see a whole person, not just a role. But I'm willing to try too, to see who we can be to each other now that we're starting from honesty instead of obligation. Come visit me after Christmas, just you. We'll have coffee. We'll talk. We'll see if we can build something real. Mom, Margaret. I mailed it the next morning. Christmas I spent alone, deliberately, peacefully alone. I cooked a small turkey, listened to carols, watched snow fall over the frozen pond. Emma sent a package, hand-knitted scarf, card saying, "Love you, Grandma, you're my hero." Jennifer sent a cautious card, no signature, just thinking of you during this difficult time. Difficult time. As if independence was hardship. But Michael sent nothing, and I thought perhaps he was respecting my request for space. Perhaps he was learning that love sometimes means staying away, until staying away stops being comfortable and becomes a choice to come back differently. New Year's Eve, Grace called. I wanted to let you know I've filed all the trust documents. Emma's $300,000 is secure, invested conservatively, managed by my firm until she's 25. Everything's exactly as you specified. Thank you, Grace. You did a remarkable thing, Margaret. Not just legally, emotionally. You taught your son that you're a person, not a resource. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. Same thing, sometimes. New Year's Day, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Opened the door to find Michael standing on my small porch, holding 2 coffees from the bakery I liked. "You said after Christmas," he said. "It's after Christmas." "So it is. Can I come in?" I stepped back, let him enter my small space, my chosen space. He looked around, at the wood stove, at Richard's photo, at my grandmother's quilt on the narrow bed visible through the bedroom door, at the life I'd built without him. "It's peaceful," he said finally.
"It is."
We sat at my small table, drank the coffee he'd brought, and for the first time in years, maybe in his entire life, Michael asked me questions that weren't about what I could do for him. "What do you do here all day?" I read. "Watch birds, walk around the pond when it's not too cold. Think about what I want to do next." "And what do you want to do next?" "I'm considering volunteer work. The library needs help. The Historical Society wants someone to catalogue old documents. I'm good at organising. I'd like to use that skill for something that matters." "That sounds good, Mum." "Margaret," I corrected gently. "Margaret," he repeated, tasting it, getting used to it. "That sounds good, Margaret." We talked for 2 hours about his business, his marriage, his daughters, about his memories of the house, of Richard, of growing up, about things I didn't know, struggles I'd never asked about because I'd been too busy being available to be curious. When he left, he hugged me at the door. "Can I come back? Next week, maybe?"
You can. But Michael,
This isn't about rebuilding what was. It's about building something new. Do you understand the difference? I'm starting to. After he left, I stood at my window watching winter light fade over the frozen pond, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not naive hope. Complicated adult hope, the kind that knows things might not work out but is willing to try anyway because trying is how you honour both yourself and the people you love. January brought clarity in the form of cold, the kind of cold that makes everything sharp-edged, crystalline, undeniable. Michael came every Tuesday, brought coffee, sat at my small table. He told me about his business struggles, the stress I'd never known about because he'd hidden it behind requests for money. He told me about fighting with Jennifer, about feeling inadequate as a father, about the weight of expectation he'd carried since Richard died. I thought if I could just manage everything, the business, the family, you, then I'd be doing what Dad would have wanted. Your father would have wanted you to live your own life, not manage mine. I know that now. He asked about Richard, real questions. What was he like when you first met? What did he want to be before he became an engineer? What was the worst fight you ever had? I answered honestly, told him about Richard's dreams of becoming an architect, about the fight we'd had over whether to have more children after Michael, about the way marriage is built on 10,000 small compromises and the handful of moments when compromise would have been betrayal. I never knew any of that. You never asked. No, I didn't. Emma, my granddaughter, came with him one Tuesday. She was cautious, protective of me in a way that touched something deep. Grandma, are you really okay? Dad says you are, but I need to hear it from you. I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She looked around the cottage. It's small. It's mine. There's a difference. Yeah. She smiled. Yeah, I get that. We talked about college, about the trust, about what she wanted to do with her life. I'm thinking about architecture, she said. Designing sustainable housing, homes people can actually afford. I thought about Richard, about the dreams we carry forward even when we don't know where they came from. Your grandfather would have loved that. Will you tell me about him, the real stuff, not just the grandpa stuff? So I did. Told her about his dreams, his fears, his stubborn insistence on doing things right, even when right was hard. Told her about building the house, about the years of work, about what it means to create something lasting. He sounds amazing. He was human, which is better than amazing. Amazing is distant. Human is possible. She hugged me when she left. Thank you for the trust, Dad told me. I don't even know what to say. Thank you. Use it wisely. Build something that matters. That's all I ask. After they left, Michael and Emma, father and daughter, I sat by my wood stove and thought about legacy. I thought about the difference between legacy and inheritance. Legacy is about patterns, about showing people how to be human. I'd given Emma money, yes, but more importantly, I'd shown her that women get to choose their own lives, that saying no is powerful, that dignity is claimed, not given. That was worth more than $300,000. February, Patricia called. The Morrisons want to invite you to dinner. They're settled now, want to show you how they've made the house their own. Are you ready for that? Was I? Ready to see my old house transformed, to walk through rooms that held 37 years of memory now overlaid with someone else's life? Yes, I said, I'm ready. I drove there on a Tuesday evening, parked in the driveway that Richard had paved, walked up the path we'd laid stone by stone. Claire answered the door. Margaret, come in, please. The house was warm, alive, full of cooking smells and children's voices and the particular chaos of a family midweek. David was in the kitchen finishing dinner. Their son Lucas was doing homework at the table. Richard's table, our table, now their table. Their daughter Emma was setting out plates. Mrs. Walsh, she said cheerfully, come see what we did with my room. She led me upstairs. The room that had been Richard's office was now hers. Painted lavender, posters of bands on the walls, books stacked on the desk David had built to fit the space. It's perfect, I said. Your dad did a good job. He says the house taught him, says good bones make everything easier. That's true, your dad understands that. Downstairs we ate dinner together, talked about their lives, their plans. David wanted to add a workshop extension. Claire was starting a garden in the spring. The kids were adjusting to their new school. It feels like home now, Claire said. I know it's only been 2 months, but it feels like we've been here forever. That means you're doing it right. After dinner, Claire made tea and we sat in the living room. The cathedral ceiling soared above us, unchanged. The windows let in the last of the winter light, exactly as Richard had planned. Can I ask you something? Claire said carefully. Your son, are you okay with how things happened? I'm getting there. We're rebuilding. It's slow, but it's real. I worried we were part of something painful for you. No, you were part of something necessary. I needed to reclaim my autonomy. You needed a home. The house needed people who would love it. Everyone got what they needed. Still, we're grateful. Every day, we're grateful. Driving home to my cottage that night, I felt the full weight of closure. The house was in good hands. Michael was trying, genuinely trying. Emma had a future secured. I had my autonomy, my peace, my small, perfect space. Everything was resolving the way it needed to. Almost everything. March brought thaw. The pond behind my cottage cracked and shifted, ice breaking into geometric patterns that caught light. I watched it from my kitchen window and thought about transformation, about how breaking is sometimes necessary for what comes next. Michael called on a Tuesday morning. Mum, Margaret, can I come over? There's something I need to say. Of course. He arrived with coffee as usual, but his hands were shaking slightly when he set the cups down. We sat at my table, surrounded by quiet. I've been working with my therapist on something, he started, on really understanding what I did. Not just apologizing, but actually comprehending how I treated you. I waited. I made you invisible. That's the word Jennifer used. She said I treated you like furniture, useful, necessary, but not alive in any way that mattered to me. And she was right. He looked up, eyes wet. I thought about you as Mom, as this role that existed to support my life. I never thought about what you wanted, what you needed, what you dreamed about. I never asked what it was like to lose Dad, to be alone in that big house, to face getting older. No, you didn't. I just showed up one day and told you to move out of your own house, the house you built, like you were a tenant instead of the owner, like your whole life was just an inconvenience to my plans. He wiped his eyes roughly, and the worst part is I thought I was being kind, helpful. I thought I was taking care of you by making decisions for you. I thought that was what good sons did. You were wrong. I was completely wrong. He took a shaky breath, and I need you to know, I see it now. I see how I erased you, how I took everything you gave and never questioned whether I should keep taking, how I assumed you'd always be there, always say yes, always accommodate whatever I needed. Michael, please, let me finish. He pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. I wrote this down because I needed to make sure I said it right. He unfolded the paper, hands trembling. Margaret Ann Walsh, you're 72 years old. You've been a widow for 3 years. You raised me by yourself after Dad died because he worked 70-hour weeks building his career. You put your teaching career on hold to make sure I had someone home after schools. You went back to teaching when I was in high school and worked for 20 more years. You retired at 65 and took care of Dad through his heart attack and recovery. You built a house with your own hands. You have skills I don't have, and strength I've never developed, and patience I've never learned. He looked up from the paper. You like mystery novels. You read one a week. Your favourite author is Dorothy Sayers. You collect vintage teacups even though you only drink from one specific mug. You hate mushrooms but pretend to like them when I cook because you don't want to hurt my feelings. You play piano but stopped when Dad died because it made you too sad. You wanted to travel to Ireland but never did because Dad got sick. You volunteer at the library every Thursday. You're afraid of flying but not of heights. You cry at movies, but not at funerals. I stared at him. That's you. That's Margaret. And I'm ashamed that I had to ask Jennifer and Emma and Patricia and even the Morrisons to tell me these things because I'd never bothered to learn them myself. My throat was tight. How do you know about the Morrisons? I called them, asked if I could visit. They were kind. They told me about you having dinner there, about how you taught their daughter to make pie, about how you talked to David about woodworking and showed him Dad's tools. He folded the paper carefully. They see you better than I did. Strangers see you better than I did. Michael, I want to do better. No, I need to do better. Not because I want my inheritance back. You should know that first. I don't want the money. I don't want the house. I want a mother who's a person, not a role. I want to know Margaret, not just Mom. He pulled out another paper. This one looked official. I signed a document with Grace. It says I have no claim to your estate, no expectation of inheritance, no legal standing to contest any decisions you make about your property or finances. It's notarized, it's binding. I did it before I came here because I needed you to know this isn't about money. I took the document, read it. It was exactly what he said, a formal renunciation of any claims to my estate. Why? Because I want a relationship with you, a real one. And real relationships can't be built on expectation of financial gain. I need you to know that when I show up here, it's because I want to see you, not because I'm protecting my investment. The silence between us was full of 30 years of accumulated damage and 3 months of careful repair. I can't promise I'll be perfect, he continued. I'll probably mess up. I'll probably fall back into old patterns. But I'm trying, really trying. And I'm asking, not because I deserve it, but because I'm hoping there's still space for me to be your son in a way that actually honors who you are. I looked at my son, 50 years old, finally seeing me. There's space, I said quietly. There's always been space. You just had to want to occupy it as someone who sees me, not just uses me. He nodded, wiped his eyes again. Can I hug you? Yes. He came around the table, wrapped his arms around me, and cried. Really cried. The kind of crying that comes from looking honestly at yourself and not liking what you see, but committing to change anyway. I held him, my son, my adult child who was finally, belatedly, becoming someone I could trust. I love you, Mom, Margaret. I love you. I love you too, Michael. I always have. That was never the question. What was the question? Whether you loved me or just loved what I provided. You've answered that now. When he left, I sat alone in my cottage and felt something settle into place. Not forgiveness that would come with time and demonstrated change, but possibility. The foundation for rebuilding. Legacy, I thought, not inheritance. The difference being clear now in ways it hadn't been before. I'd taught my son, finally, what my grandmother had tried to teach me, that love without respect is consumption, that family without boundaries is tyranny, that the people who care for you most deserve to be seen as complete humans, not just functions in your life. It had taken selling a house and establishing distance and refusing contact until he learned these things. But he'd learned them. That was worth more than $800,000. Spring arrived slowly, then all at once. The pond thawed completely. Ducks returned. The trees around my cottage budded in that tentative way that says winter is truly over. Michael came every Tuesday, sometimes alone, sometimes with Emma. We talked about ordinary things, his work, the girls' school activities, what I was reading. But underneath the ordinary ran something new, genuine curiosity, actual presence, The kind of attention that says, I see you as a person, not a role. Jennifer came once, hesitant. I owe you an apology too, she said quietly. I never saw you. I just saw what you could provide. Free babysitting, Sunday dinners, loans. I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that. The girls ask about you. Can they visit? My other granddaughter, Sarah, Michael's youngest, came with Jennifer the following week. She was 14, awkward, kind in the unself-conscious way of children who haven't yet learned to perform kindness. Grandma, your house is tiny. It is. I like tiny. Why? Because tiny is mine. I spent 37 years in a big house taking care of other people. Now I have a tiny house taking care of myself. It feels right. She thought about that. I like your pond. Me too. We walked around it together, Sarah asking questions about birds and trees and whether fish lived in water that froze. Normal questions, the kind grandmothers answer while hearts quietly heal. April, Grace called. Emma turns 18 next month. The trust documents specify she can know about it then, even though she can't access funds until 25. Do you want to tell her, or should I? I'll tell her. She should hear it from family. I invited Emma, my granddaughter, my namesake, to the cottage for her birthday. Made her favourite cake, hung streamers, created celebration in my small space. When she arrived, she looked around with obvious pleasure. Grandma, I love this place. It's so you. Is it peaceful, deliberate, beautiful in a quiet way? That observation from an 18-year-old told me I'd done something right. We ate cake, talked about college. She'd been accepted to architecture school, would start in the fall. Talked about her dreams of designing affordable housing, of creating spaces where people could build lives. That's what your great-grandfather wanted, to design spaces that mattered, Dad told me. He says I have Grandpa's eyes for space. You do, and you have something else. I pulled out the trust documents Grace had prepared. You have a foundation to build on. I explained the trust. $300,000 for education, for starting her career, for buying her first home, money that would give her freedom to pursue meaningful work instead of just lucrative work. Emma cried, Grandma, I can't. This is too much. It's exactly enough. Your great-grandfather and I built a house. Your grandfather worked his whole life. This money represents decades of labour and love. I want you to use it to build something that matters. Does Dad know? Yes. He's known since November. He could have told you, but he wanted you to hear it from me when you were ready. He's changed, hasn't he, Dad? He's different now. He's learning to see people. It's never too late to learn that. She hugged me for a long time. Thank you, not just for the money, for showing me that women get to choose their own lives, for teaching me that saying no is powerful, for being brave enough to walk away when staying would have erased you. You'll remember that when you're my age and someone tries to make you small? I'll remember, I promise. May, The pond was full of life. Ducklings followed their mother in perfect formation. Frogs sang at dusk. The world renewed itself with complete indifference to human drama, which was comforting. Michael sat on my small porch, coffee in hand, watching the water. I talked to the Morrisons. They invited me to see the house. And I said no. I don't need to see it. It's not mine anymore. Maybe it never was. That's wise. Grace called me yesterday, said you added something to Emma's trust documents, a letter for when she turns 25. Yes. What did you say? I looked at my son, at the man who'd finally learned to see me. I told her that the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the truth, that loving people doesn't mean erasing ourselves for them, that dignity is claimed, not given, and that her great-grandmother, my mother, would have been proud to see her build things that matter. She'll treasure that. I hope so. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that exists between people who've stopped performing and started being. Thank you, Mum, Michael said finally, for teaching me, even though I fought every lesson. That's what makes them stick. He left. I watched his car disappear down the road, then turned back to my cottage, my tiny, perfect, chosen space. Inside, I made tea, sat by the window, watched the pond catch evening light. Somewhere the Morrisons were having dinner in the house Richard and I built. Somewhere Emma was planning her future with foundations I'd provided. Somewhere Michael was learning to be a son who saw his mother as a person. And here, in this small cottage by a pond, Margaret Walsh, not mother, not widow, not grandmother, but Margaret, lived a life of her own choosing. The silence had no weight. It had wings.